Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. I stared at Emma's phone on the coffee table. It wasn't like me to invade someone's privacy, least of all hers. But something had been gnawing at me for days, an unease I couldn't quite shake. Emma had been acting strangely since her bachelorette party the previous weekend. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, her laughter felt forced, and she'd been unusually protective of her phone, which was entirely unlike her. It was late evening, and she was in the shower. I sat there, my palms sweating, torn between respecting her boundaries and the suffocating weight of my suspicions. I tried to reason with myself. Was I overthinking? But then I remembered the hushed whispers of her friends at brunch, the way they exchanged quick glances and changed the subject the moment I walked in. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked up her phone. The lock screen blinked open. I knew her password. It was our anniversary date. My stomach churned as I navigated to her messages. There they were. Threads of conversations with two different names I didn't recognize. Jason and Leo. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. Jason. Last weekend was insane. I can't stop thinking about you. Emma. It was fun. Let's keep it between us though. George can't know. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My breathing quickened as I scrolled further, each message cutting deeper than the last. Jason wasn't just some friend. He was someone she'd been intimate with at her bachelorette party. I shifted to the other thread. Leo's tone was more casual, but the content was just as damning. Leo, you look stunning Saturday night. I still can't believe we were close. Emma, share. Don't remind me. I need to focus on my wedding. The word wedding felt like a mockery. My wedding. Our wedding. The life we've been planning together for the past 2 years. The sound of the shower turning off jolted me. Panic coursed through me as I quickly placed her phone back on the table and moved to the couch. My chest heaved as I tried to compose myself, but the images conjured by those texts were relentless. Emma emerged moments later, wrapped in a towel, her hair damp and cascading down her shoulders. She smiled at me, an easy, effortless smile that now seemed like a cruel facade. Hey, she said, you okay? You look pale. I forced a nod. Yeah, just tired. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment before she shrugged and headed to the bedroom. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was it just the bachelorette party, or had there been more? I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to process this, to figure out my next move. The wedding was only 2 weeks away. My family, her family, our friends, they were all preparing for what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. But now, the idea of walking down the aisle felt like a betrayal of myself. That night, as Emma slept soundly beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts a whirlwind of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had planned to spend my life with, had shattered everything with a few careless decisions. By morning, my resolve was clear. I wouldn't be her fool. When she left for work, I started packing my things. Every item I placed in the suitcase felt like a piece of my heart breaking away, but I knew this was the only way. I couldn't look her in the eye and pretend everything was fine. I couldn't give her the opportunity to lie or manipulate her way out of this. By the time Emma returned home, I was gone. All that remained was a note on the kitchen counter. Emma, I know. The wedding is off. Don't contact me. I left the key beside the note and walked out, the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders. As I drove away, I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. The knock at the door came sooner than I expected. It had only been 2 days since I left, but the silence I had hoped for was shattered by Emma's unmistakable voice. George, I know you're in there. Please open the door. I stood frozen in my tiny rented apartment, staring at the handle as if it might turn on its own. The last thing I wanted was a face-to-face confrontation, but Emma wasn't the type to back down. George, I need to talk to you, she shouted, her voice cracking. I can explain everything. Please. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and opened the door. Emma stood there, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She was holding the note I'd left on the kitchen counter, crumpled in her hand like it was the reason her world was falling apart. What do you want, Emma? My voice was calm, but cold. Her lip quivered. I need to talk to you. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, I interrupted. I saw the messages. I know everything. Her face crumpled, and tears streamed down her cheeks. George, it wasn't what it looked like. It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Which part was the mistake, Emma? Sleeping with Jason or Leo? Or was it just getting caught? Her breath hitched as she tried to compose herself. I was drunk, George. It wasn't supposed to happen. My friends, they pushed me into it. I didn't even know what I was doing. I scoffed, shaking my head. Don't you dare blame this on alcohol or your friends. You made those choices, Emma. You knew exactly what you were doing when you lied to me. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. Please, George, she pleaded. We can fix this. We've been through so much together. Don't throw it all away over one mistake. One mistake, I said, my voice rising. This wasn't one mistake, Emma. It was a series of choices. You betrayed me, lied to me, and now you expect me to just forget? Pretend it never happened? Her tears fell harder now, and she dropped to her knees, clutching at my arm. I love you, George. I made a mistake, but I love you. Don't do this to us. I stepped back, forcing her to release me. You don't get to play the victim here, Emma. You did this to us. You destroyed what we had. The hallway grew quiet except for her sobs. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by the memory of those messages, the blatant betrayal. I'm done, I said firmly. There's no coming back from this. The wedding is off, and so are we. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with desperation. You're making a mistake, George. You're letting anger ruin everything we've built. No, Emma, I said, my voice steady. You ruined everything. Now please leave. She stood slowly, brushing herself off. Her expression hardened, the tears drying on her face. You'll regret this, she said quietly. You'll see. You're throwing away the best thing you ever had. I closed the door without another word, leaning against it as her footsteps faded down the hallway. My chest felt tight, my emotions a volatile mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. The steady hum of my mother's teapot filled the silence as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the faint patterns in the wood grain. It had been a week since the confrontation with Emma, and I still hadn't unpacked the jumble of emotions that churned inside me. Anger, betrayal, relief. It was like a storm that refused to pass. Here, my mother placed a steaming mug of tea in front of me and took a seat across the table. She studied me with those piercing eyes that always seemed to know exactly what I was feeling before I even opened my mouth. You've barely said a word, George, she began gently. But I know you didn't come here just for the tea. I sighed, wrapping my hands around the mug. The warmth seeped into my fingers, but it did little to comfort me. I ended it, I said finally. Emma and I, it's over. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, but she didn't seem surprised. And how do you feel about that? I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. How do you think? Betrayed, humiliated, like I've wasted years of my life on someone who didn't respect me enough to stay loyal. She reached out, placing a hand over mine. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know this isn't easy, but you did the right thing. Staying in a relationship without trust, that's no way to live. For a moment, her words offered some solace, but doubt lingered like a shadow. What if I overreacted? I asked, my voice quieter now. She kept saying it was a mistake, that she was influenced by her friends. What if? My mother cut me off with a firm look. George, don't you dare start second-guessing yourself. You saw the messages. She made her choices. This isn't about one night of bad decisions. It's about a pattern of betrayal and lies. You deserve better than that. I don't even know where to start, I admitted, my voice cracking. Everything feels so empty. You start by taking it one day at a time, she said softly. And you let yourself feel the pain, but don't let it consume you. You have so much ahead of you, George. Don't let this define you. Her unwavering support was like a lifeline, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Later that evening, as I packed up a few more belongings to move into my friend David's apartment, I found an old photo of Emma and me from our first vacation together. We looked so happy, so carefree. I stared at it for a long moment before tucking it into a box. The past was the past, and no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't let it hold me back. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. You deserve better than that. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. Emma's betrayal would not be the end of my story. I walked into the office building with an uneasy sense of anticipation. It was my first day back at work since I canceled the wedding, and the thought of facing my colleagues filled me with a strange mix of dread and determination. Word had undoubtedly spread. Gossip travels faster than sound in a workplace like mine. As I stepped into the elevator, I noticed the sideways glances from two co-workers. They whispered behind cupped hands, their eyes darting toward me. Let them talk, I told myself. The truth doesn't need defending. Claire, one of my close friends from the office, cornered me in the break room. She placed a sandwich on the counter and leaned in, her eyes filled with concern. I've been meaning to check in. Are you okay? I heard about. She trailed off, as if unsure how to phrase it. I appreciated her discretion, but I was tired of sidestepping the topic. You heard about Emma, I finished for her, keeping my tone neutral. Claire nodded, hesitating. Yeah, people are talking, you know how it is. I just wanted to make sure you're holding up. I sighed, setting down my coffee. It's been a lot, but I'm managing. Honestly, I'd rather not dwell on it. Her expression softened. Fair enough. Just know I'm here if you need to talk, or even just escape for a bit. Office gossip can be brutal. Thanks, Claire, I said, managing a small smile. That means more than you know. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines, but I felt a growing sense of relief as I reconnected with the rhythm of my work life. One evening, as I walked home, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Curiosity tugged at me as I opened it. George, it's Emma. I just wanted to say I'm moving away. I need a fresh start, and I hope you find one too. I'm sorry for everything. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. The apology felt too late, too hollow. Later that night, as I sat on the couch in David's apartment, he handed me a beer and plopped down beside me. You know, he said, cracking open his own drink, you're handling this whole thing better than I expected. I thought you'd be a wreck for months. I chuckled, taking a sip. Don't get me wrong, I was, but something about seeing her name pop up again, knowing she's gone now, it feels like the final page in that chapter of my life. David nodded. Good, because you've got a whole book left to write, my friend. I raised my bottle in a mock toast. Here's to better chapters ahead. And for the first time in weeks, I truly believed they were. Then, one rainy evening as I sat on the couch, my friend James sent me a text. Have you heard about Emma? Brace yourself for this one. Curiosity piqued, I called him back. James, always one for theatrics, made me wait before revealing the news. She met someone, he said finally. Some big shot businessman. They got married last weekend. Quickest wedding I've ever seen. Good for her, I said, though the words tasted hollow. Wait, there's more, James added, his tone shifting. He's already cheating on her. With everyone. You won't believe it, her friends, even a waitress at their reception. It's like karma decided to show up in person. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. A strange mix of pity and grim satisfaction settled in my chest. Does she know? I asked quietly. Apparently, James replied. But she's staying. Maybe she thinks she can fix him. I hung up after the call, staring out the window as the rain streaked the glass. Her betrayal had come full circle, hitting her like a boomerang she hadn't seen returning. For the first time, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. Life had a way of balancing the scales, even if it wasn't in the way we expected. Months passed, and the bitterness that once consumed me slowly faded into a quiet resolve. My days were filled with work, gym sessions, and the occasional meetup with friends. I was beginning to feel like myself again, or maybe someone new, someone stronger. Then one morning, as I was sipping coffee at my favorite cafe, I met Lydia. She was standing at the counter, fumbling with her wallet, clearly flustered. Here, let me get that, I offered, stepping forward. She looked up, her hazel eyes meeting mine, and smiled. Thank you, I promise I'm not usually this scatterbrained. We ended up sharing a table, talking about everything from books to travel. Lydia was nothing like Emma. She was genuine, grounded, and her laugh had a way of cutting through any lingering darkness in my heart. As weeks turned into months, Lydia and I grew closer. She didn't just fill the empty spaces in my life. She made me want to embrace them. She was a reminder that life could still be beautiful, even after heartbreak. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I knelt on one knee and asked Lydia to marry me. Her joyful yes echoed in my ears like the sweetest melody. Our wedding was small and intimate, a far cry from the elaborate affair I had once planned with Emma. But it was perfect, surrounded by those who truly cared for us. As I stood at the altar, watching Lydia walk towards me, her smile radiant, I realized how far I had come. Emma was a distant memory, a lesson learned. I was no longer the man who had been broken by betrayal. I was a man reborn, standing beside a woman who taught me to believe in love again. Together, Lydia and I built a life filled with laughter, trust, and unwavering happiness. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.